Welcome to the Mighty Oak Show. Glad to have you with us today and looking forward to a great conversation. For those of you that are watching for the very first time, thank you for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, do us a favor, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. There is so much content that we put out, not just this show, but other content designed to help you, and we'd love for you to see that, to know it comes online. So subscribe to the channel, go ahead and hit the notification bell. That lets you know when that new content comes online. Drop a comment in the comment section if you'd like to, share this out, and we'd love to have this really be a conversation, not just a one-way talk. So again, thank you for watching. If you're listening on the podcast or you're listening over at Mojo 50, thank you for listening. Love to have so many folks engaged in what we're talking about. And Mighty Oaks, we, of course, if you follow us, you know this, we serve the veteran community. We serve veterans and their families, as well as active duty service members and their families, and more the first responder community. And I think in a couple of weeks, we're actually going to talk more about the first responders programs of Mighty Oaks. But as we really do our best to serve the veterans community, we've gotten to know some amazing people. One of the people that is amazing is with us today. He is no stranger to the Mighty Oaks Show or to the Mighty Oaks YouTube channel. In fact, if you look up Rivera, you'll find his video. I believe it's still the most watched and listened to video on our YouTube channel, which is crazy to me because I didn't think it was that good. But Luis, apparently other people think it's good. But no, it's awesome. Luis actually works with us here at Mighty Oaks. He is the operations manager for our programs team. Again, if you're not familiar with what we do a number of things with veterans, but kind of the core of what we do, the main effort of Mighty Oaks is what we call our legacy programs. And we have these programs at one of 4 locations across the country. It's a week-long program where men in our men's program, ladies in our women's program come, and really we talk about trauma, we talk about what it is and how it impacts not only us but our relationships and our worldview and our purpose going forward. But beyond that, we like to offer a solid framework to move forward in spite of what's happened to us. And so we do that. But that is our main effort generally, and this year has been different, but generally we have close to 800 folks that will go through one of those week-long programs, again, across the country. And Luis is very, very integral in managing that. And so thankful for his perspective. Before Mighty Oaks, though, he served in the United States Navy, and for a large part of that served as a Navy SEAL. And that's what I want to talk about today. So many interesting stories that we have. And Luis, you and I have talked several times, even on the Mighty Oaks Show. But I wanted to talk specifically today about your experience coming into the SEAL community. So for those that don't know you, talk about how you came into the Navy, first of all. Your story is really interesting because you didn't have a direct pipeline into to BUDS and to SEALs. In fact, you served for quite a while in the Navy before you made that leap. So talk about how you got into the Navy and then how you ended up going to BUDS in the first place. And then let's talk a little bit about that training, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I would start off by saying that my siblings and I were born in Puerto Rico. My mom and dad were born in Puerto Rico, and when I was 6, they moved to Louisiana. At right around 12 years old, my parents got a divorce, and then at 17, I graduated high school and I entered the Navy. I originally entered as a submarine readyman, that contract, a submarine readyman. I went to, that was in 1990. And I went to Groton, Connecticut for my first, schooling, about a year and a half. Got to my first submarine in 92 in Norfolk, Virginia. And I remember being an E4 in Norfolk, Virginia. Back as a readyman, we used to use those 3.5-inch discs. Yeah. We would have to leave the submarine with our little pouches and walk up the ladder and go up to the submarine tender, get our message traffic. Well, one morning it was just about, the sun's about to come up. It was still dark, and I can remember seeing out of the corner of my eye, coming down this ladder, this bread truck just pull up it was by itself, this bread truck. And all of a sudden, these bunch of guys got out, big guys with some weird uniforms, just started walking down this pier. And they got into this white van with every single window, including the windshield, was blacked out. And they left. And so I went downstairs to the sub after delivering the traffic, and I asked my chief what was going on there. And he told me who they were. and they were SEALs. So that's piqued my interest as to who they were, what I wanted to do.
Right.
Then in 1995, that submarine got decommed in Mare Island, and I submitted a package to go to BUD/S. And things didn't work out for me. I was there for 2 weeks. So in 95, I was 23, I think, 24. Yeah, 24. And
Wow.
and so things didn't work out. I quit. I quit even before Hell Week. So I went back to another submarine for 4.5 years. During that time frame, 95, I just got married. I started to have children. And in 1999 or so, that marriage just dissolved. And my kids were young. I made the conscious decision to go back to BUD/S. And they were really young. And in 2000, I went back to BUD/S in July.
How much time had passed between the first time and the second time?
Roughly 4.5 years, almost 5 years.
So you were 27, 28?
I was about to turn 28. That's an interesting story because I got to BUD/S in July of 2000. I was 27 and started BUD/S. I got injured in my first Hell Week. It was a summer Hell Week. And because of the point in the Hell Week where I got injured, I had to go back to day one, week one of training.
Most people don't like to do BUD/S once. You did it 3 times.
Well, I wouldn't say I did it 3 times. I think I tried out 3 times,
right.
Which meant that's something significantly different for someone who has gone through BUD/S. I tried out 3 times. The 3rd time it stuck. So, but I did start off the 3rd time from day one, week one. I will say that. And what that really meant for me was instead of a summer Hell Week, I went into a winter Hell Week. And that's a very different story for guys that are going through BUD/S, especially for me who was born in Puerto Rico, raised in Louisiana, used to hot weather, and so out of the frying pan into the fire, right? And so back to what I was saying about my age in Hell Week, the second time in 2000, which was in December, I turned 28 on the second day of Hell Week. And man, our numbers were dwindling, and we were left with less than 20 guys we started off, I think, in orientation around 130 something.
Wow. What's the average age of a guy going through BUD/S?
Yeah, I would say the average age, I don't know if it's changed much, but in the lower 20s, like 21, 22, maybe 23, somewhere around there.
So you were in the Navy, you decided to lateral over. Someone coming into the Navy, is it possible to come in with a contract that sends you directly to BUD/S out of basic or whatever?
That's correct. In 2006, it was when the Navy decided to give the SEAL their own rate.
Yeah.
So originally I was a submarine rating, and that was a source rating in order to even attempt to go. So now you can go in with the contract as a special operator, as an SO.
Do you think it helped you to have that Navy experience, or did it hurt you going into it? Sometimes ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think initially when things were going this way as far as the rating is concerned, you saw a lot of, I think, immaturity going in because guys were just doing it for the glamour. Guys were just doing it for the money. And I think there's been a switch that's happened. I'm not too sure. I got out in 2015. So I think because of my Navy being in the military for 10 years and also the fact that I was committed and I was 28, I think it helped me to have that maturity level and that vision that's just a little bit wider going in.
Were you treated better or worse because of your?
Yeah, that's, I will say there were a few experiences when, every single phase I went into, there's 3 phases in BUD/S. So every single phase I went into, man, I had to, go back to that humble pie. Not that everyone doesn't eat humble pie, but I think because I was more senior and they expected more from me, there was some humble pie that I had to eat. Even going into my platoon, I was in E6 going into a platoon that had seasoned E5s. and who were there much longer than I. So it really trained me to go into platoon and keep my head down and volunteer for everything.
Yeah, that's crazy. So a lot of people are very interested, and I think part of it is just popular media, it's movies, it's other things, very interested in SEALs specifically. And if you ask most people, what do you know about the SEALs, they'd say, you know, whatever. They might name some operation or something, but most people would talk about BUDS because I think that's what most people are familiar with. And yet most people don't know anything about BUDS. It's crazy because, you know, we were just talking about this, but the Discovery Channel put out a series on BUDS that you were a part of. And interestingly, as a side note, one of the ways people find your video on the Mighty Oaks YouTube channel is through that video, which is pretty crazy. I've had people, when I've been out speaking, that will come up to me and say, hey, do you know Luis Rivera? I remember watching this video, and that's how they know you, which is pretty cool. But describe first of all what BUDS is. So there's 3 phases to it. What's the objective? And what do those 3 phases look like? And then, you know, I'd love to talk about, you know, some of your personal challenges getting through that. I believe that most people, this is my opinion, but I believe that most people going into the military, physically, they could probably deal with whatever training. I mean, we talk about these different types of training. Most people can deal with it, not all people, but most people going into the military could. And so I don't think that's the thing that causes, you know, most people to drop. But describe BUDS. What are the objectives? What are they trying to accomplish? What are those 3 phases? And then let's talk about some of the challenges of that.
Yeah, I think to begin with, I think the best thing to say as far as BUDS is concerned is this crawl, walk, run way of doing things. I mean, you start at a really basic level. So it stands for Basic Enlisted. I'm sorry, that's for some reason. Basic Underwater Demolition / SEAL. That's what it stands for, BUDS. And so the first phase it's considered a phase that's meant to really to weed out those who aren't really committed. And each phase is roughly 7 weeks long. It's just really meant there's Hell Week is the point when a lot of attrition happens.
At what point is that in the training? Hell Week.
You know, so in 1995, I think when I went through in 95, it was like in the 3rd week. And then when I went in 2000, if I'm not mistaken, it was in the 5th week. And so it shifts. It shifts. But it's basically meant to test someone to see how committed they are. And a lot of people that go there, you know, believe that the instructor staff is there to make sure you don't make it. Well, that's not the case at all. They don't really have to try hard to get someone to quit. They just allow the program to work. And they're really there to really get guys moving forward and go to the next phase. They really want to build guys up, but guys somehow get this internal focus and not this team focus, and they just end up deselecting themselves or drop on request.
So that's the first phase. What are the other phases designed to accomplish?
The other phases are meant to just establish a foundation so you can build upon when you get to SEAL qualification training, which is right after BUDS. And so the second phase is dive phase. It's all water stuff. It starts with open circuit, and then it finishes off with closed circuit scuba. And it's just really meant to test your competency in the water. I had problems in second phase during the open circuit tests, and there was a point there where I was worried that whether or not I was going to be able to make it. But it really tests your competency under stress, underwater.
Yeah, and then third phase is just continued preparation to.
Right. So third phase is more of a land warfare phase that tests different skills that they teach you, with its weapons or land nav or land warfare. And so there's just these tests that you get taught. You get taught these classes, and then you have to perform. So it's really more of a test as a team effort before you go into the next phase, which is other SEAL qualification training.
What is the, I think a lot of people misunderstand the mission of the SEAL teams. And it's very different than, you know, a lot of folks who are in the Navy. To me, even me, having been around it for a long time, it's a real weird thing. Like you have the Navy and then you have the SEAL community. But when you talk about buds and the attrition of buds and how important that is, and it is important to weed out those who are not committed, why is that? What is the mission of the SEAL team that requires that kind of dedication or focus?
Yeah, I think when I went through, what I learned was it allows you to see whether or not you're there for the right reasons. Now, that doesn't mean there's some people that just fall through the cracks. Every force, no matter who you are, you're going to have some problem children. But I think for the most part, it really allows you to find out for yourself if you're there for the right reasons. And they do a good job to ensuring that you can prove to yourself that you're there for the right reasons.
Yeah. And then when a SEAL team is deployed later on, after all your training, you're in a team. What are those teams typically doing? Other than killing bin Laden, which is the only thing any of us know about, and making movies. Other than those two things, what is the bigger mission of the SEAL team?
Yeah, it's a maritime force. You know, it's morphed right after 9/11. Things just changed a lot for the community, and we saw that with Iraq and Afghanistan. But I think originally it was meant for just a maritime mission. The force grew during that time, during 9/11. 2 new teams stood up right after 9/11, Team 7 and Team 10. And I think some missions changed, the way things happened changed. But the force itself as a platoon or as a troop with 2 platoons, I don't think that, you know, their ability to fit in different situations, I think that's what makes them so good. And I don't think that's really changed at all.
How many times did you deploy as a SEAL to combat?
4 times.
4 times. Okay. And eventually you went back and worked at BUD/S. You were one of the instructors at BUD/S, correct? And that was after your combat deployments?
So yes, my last deployment was in 2010, and that was to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
And right after that deployment, I ended up going to SEAL qualification training, the land warfare portion. And SEAL qualification training is another round of just working with tactics. And, you know, you've got dive phase, you've got land warfare phase, you got other phase. And I was in a land warfare phase. At that point, it was the very end of SEAL qualification training. So I was there for a couple of years. And then I made the decision to retire. And I submitted my retirement paperwork. Yeah. And just before I retired, for a couple of years, I ended up going back to the beginning of BUD/S, which is orientation. So guys come from boot camp, they go into an 8-week training program in Great Lakes, and then they come to orientation to orient them before BUD/S.
So how important was it to you as a SEAL who had deployed to combat, when you went back to BUD/S as an instructor, how important was it to you to make sure that the right people got through and the wrong people didn't? Did that change your perspective on that process coming back as someone who's been deployed, you know, forward deployed?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think it's difficult to try to apply, you know, deployments, because deployments change from time to time, and what you've learned there, and trying to determine what basic core values are used in deployments and instill that in training.
Yeah.
Because deployments are different, but certain things don't change, whether it's integrity, whether it's your ability to perform under stress, and take the focus off yourself, because those kinds of things you can see early on in training, they just naturally rise. Those guys who just are self-focused, who just do things, whether it's character-wise, those are the kind of things that need to be weeded out in that portion of the training.
Yeah, I remember, and I don't like to drop this in every conversation, but I remember when I was at officer candidate school as a Marine candidate, right? I was getting ready, I was going through the process. I was called a candidate before being commissioned. I remember one of the days there, one of our instructors, and for those that are unfamiliar, it doesn't matter that much, I guess, but at officer candidate school, there are drill instructors who come off the drill field to run the candidates through their training at officer candidate school. So we have drill instructors there. But they're all senior staff NCOs. So, they're staff sergeants, they're gunnies, and then, typically a first sergeant. And I remember one day, one of those staff NCOs, in the context of training, saying, look, you have to understand this. We do what we do to make sure you're ready to go into the fleet, to lead Marines, because someday we may be the platoon sergeant of the platoon you're leading. We may be fighting side by side with you, and we want to make sure you're ready. And that's always stuck with me, that at every phase of training, and all of the folks who are involved in training, in the military, there's a vested interest in that training, because at some point you may move out of the training world and into a combat world, and now those who are doing the training and those who are being trained are fighting side by side. And I think it's intriguing to come back from a combat deployment and now you're responsible for training, because you know what's at stake with those who are downrange making those decisions. And in a peacetime world, you just don't care as much, and there's not an easier way to say it. But in combat, the person standing next to you, you want to know that they're capable of doing whatever needs to be done to win.
Yeah, I would say that, when I initially went in 95, the same values, the same type of training, the same amount of investment the instructor staff had was there.
Yeah.
When I went in 2000. And then when I went as an instructor in 2011, 12, 13, and 14, things really didn't change. There was still the same amount of investment, whether it was peacetime or wartime. And I think that's what's unique about that. And I don't think it's very different from any community in Special Operations Command that's in the training pipeline. That intensity, the core values that are there, they're always instilled, whether you're in peacetime or in war.
Let's talk about the reason people drop out of training like this. Whether it's BUDS or it's Ranger School, other schools that have high attritions. The Marine Corps, we have basic reconnaissance course and other courses that have high attrition as well. Outline maybe some of your own personal struggles in pushing through that, getting to the end, and then some of the things you saw in other people that caused them to, whether it was drop on request or be dropped just because the instructor said they don't have what it takes.
Yeah, so I would say in 1995, when I quit training, the second week, it was before Hell Week. The one thing that I would say I was immature. I wasn't invested the way that I was in 2000. Now, when I went back in 2000, I had more problems. I mean, I was getting a divorce. There were family issues that I had going on during training. My dad passed away, and because I had already been held back from Hell Week, I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to,
Wow.
just delay my graduation point. And during the training too, they were pulling me out at night to go talk to the JAG, to go deal with this divorce that I was going through. And so there was a lot of things going on in the background. But I will say, man, I was committed because I knew what needed to be there based off of my experience in 95. And the one thing that I knew that I could do before I got to BUDS in 2000 was be physically prepared. A lot of guys will probably tell you, man, it's way more mentally challenging than it is physically challenging to go through BUDS. And that's true. If I made sure that my body was physically prepared, then those mental challenges, my brain was freed up to deal with those things because I was already physically prepared. But to answer your question regarding why people were checking out on their own, man, there were some expectations that they had, and I think there was a false sense of motivation, and people actually weren't being real with themselves, that, man, there's going to be some hard times that I'm going to have to rely on other people to help me out with what's going on.
Yeah.
And that really builds this team going forward. What
are some of the lessons from BUDS that you've taken with you in your life? I'm sure you have these conversations. Well, I know you do because I've pushed some of them toward you. But I have people reach out to me a lot. My son is going to the military. My grandson or my granddaughter's going to the military. Can you talk to him? Can you help them prepare? What are some of the lessons you've taken through your life and that you would communicate to others from your time at Buds?
Yeah, I would say that life challenges are good because they reveal what's truly in your heart. I think stress and just going through difficult times are good because they
Yeah.
reveal what's truly in your heart.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. A lot of folks don't deal well with stress, right? And they don't deal with the challenges well. And I think that's our audience. That's who we speak to, are people who are challenged with what's going on in their lives. Now, that's not everyone who would watch this show, but when we're having those one-on-one conversations, that's who we're talking to, is people who are going through something. And I think, you would attest to this, I'm sure, that in our organization, we uniquely are in a position where most of the people that we talk to are really struggling with things. And sometimes those challenges reveal what's in their heart. And the reason they're reaching out is because they know they don't have it. How do you help someone in the middle of, hell week, even if their hell week isn't a relationship or an emotional hell week or something else they're going through in their life? When someone looks inside and they say, all right, this has revealed that there's something lacking in me, where do you find the strength and the motivation to move on?
Yeah. So in Buds, both officers and enlisted go through that pipeline together, and they form this close bond as officer and enlisted going through. What I've noticed is the guys that are in a leadership position, the instructor staff leans heavy on those guys to lead from the front. And so they want God. So as the leadership in the class, the best way that I can show where I want a guy to be and what I want a guy to do is to do it myself first. And I saw officers do that. I saw officers rise to the occasion and do that. And I saw junior guys do it. And it just takes one guy to just go, and people will follow.
Yeah.
And I saw that time after time after time after time. And the big lesson that I've learned is that talk is cheap.
Yeah.
Talk is just cheap.
It's funny, I was just talking about this earlier today, but a lot of folks will talk about passion and how important passion is to accomplish things. And we all know that in the course of life, we'll do things that we were super passionate about when we started. And somehow along the way, we lose our passion for it. And often it's because, like you said earlier, we did not really understand what we were getting into, or we underestimated the difficulty of what we were getting into, or whatever. And so because passion is lost, some people will come to the conclusion that since I've lost my passion, that means I shouldn't be here, or I shouldn't be doing this. Where, my belief is that when you've lost your passion, you need to step back and say, all right, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Even if I don't feel like doing it right now, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? And if the answer is yes, then the answer for a lack of passion is to do the work. And passion is an emotion, and so often we get dragged into things by our emotions. We're passionate about it. The SEAL community, there's probably not a better marketing arm of the United States military than people that promote the SEAL community. They do a great job, and it's a great mission, and they've done great things, and so it's easy to say, I want to do that. But quickly, I would imagine your passion is lost, and the answer to that is not quitting or stepping back. It's leaning into it, and like you said, it's stepping up and rising to the challenge. But that's a conscious decision, right?
That's right. And I like what you said there, there's work that's going to be done. Work needs to be done. No matter what there's going to be work. And if you can accept that on the front end, there's going to be work. As far as Buds is concerned, there are exercises, there are evolutions that's meant to bring you to a point of failure and to test how you handle that. I mean, no one is this physical specimen that's going to be doing well at every single evolution. At some point, whether it's the cold, a run, a swim, an obstacle course, weapons, navigation, diving. There's going to be some point where there's going to be failure, and we'll see how you handle that. How you grow from that. Are you going to put in the work to train yourself, to be trained by others, to come out better on the other side? There is work to be done.
And I think that removes a lot of the stress from someone in a very stressful situation is understanding I can't control everything. I can't do a lot of stuff, but the one thing I can do is just put my head down and keep working, keep pushing forward, and eventually you get to the other side. And man, I think that's lost. In so many places. I think in relationships it's lost. We're super passionate about a relationship until we get into it and hit a rough patch, and then it's like, well, I don't feel like I love them anymore. Or my passion's gone. So maybe this wasn't right. Well, maybe you just need to do the work. And man, so many times I think that's the thing that will carry you forward.
Yeah, and I think what I hear you saying is your level of commitment. Whether you're talking about marriages or work, like occupation. I saw a stat the other day that from the ages of 18 and 55, and I forget what year this was taken. I think this was maybe taken in 2019. There's been a change of occupation 12 times.
Wow. Wow.
I mean, what does that level of occupation commitment show you? And so I think what I hear you saying is, man, if you're committed, understand that things are going to get difficult. There's going to be some challenges. Okay, what was your commitment level? Where was that?
Yeah.
One thing that I do remember from Bud training was I had problems drown proofing, which is tests your this is in first phase, test your competency of your ability to move through the water underwater with your hands and your feet tied, those kinds of things. My body was really dense, and so I would, with a full breath of air, I would sink like a rock.
Right.
And so to be able to relax and show proficiency in what I've learned in a little tiny square box, with my hand and feet tied, I failed initially. Mm-hmm. But I realized, man, I have to put in the work so that I can put into practice what I've been taught. And I learned from that experience. Man, that taught me a lot. That, man, there are people out here that are smarter than I am. That want to see me do well. That want to see me do the work. And it's up to me to put in the work.
Yeah, that's good. So work hard and then teamwork, right? So your commitment, work hard, and then teamwork. It's funny, I make fun of SEALs as often as I can for this one. They always talk about the teams, right? It's all about the teams. I'm in the teams. Which team are you? Everything's about the teams, right? But that's extremely intentional. I mean, I can make fun of it, but it is intentional. And that begins at BUD/S, learning about the importance of the team. The individual is far less important than the team. Can you talk about the importance of teamwork in, in the SEAL community as an operator, but then how that translates into kind of the rest of life?
Yeah. So you get into a platoon and a lot is put on your plate. You have a lot of responsibility. They give you instruction and very little oversight. So because of all the training you've gone to, you understand you've got leadership in that platoon that, is accountable or is responsible for that work. And certain people are accountable to ensure that work is being done. So there's so much going on to work up in this interdeployment training cycle before you go out the door that, man, it's impossible to ensure everyone's doing what they're doing. So at the end of the day, at the end of the week, at the end of the month, everyone comes together to ensure these things are checked off. And it takes a team to do that. People need to be qualified. A platoon, a troop, a whole entire squadron, a team needs to be qualified before they head out the door with the proper guys in the right place, with the training, with the quals, all those things, they need to be in place. And it takes an individual that's in charge of that to ensure that happens, contributing to the team, constantly contributing to the team.
How is that communicated at BUD/S? I know that's probably the first time a lot of people have even learned that concept.
Yeah, I would say in BUD/S, the good thing is that initially phase one, it started off with a lot of evolutions that are team-based. When you carry these logs, when you carry the boat, when you do things as a team in Hell Week, they're just team-based, and so it's really easy to point out when you're watching a group of guys carrying a log who is not carrying their own weight. When you have that log over your head for an extended period of time, who's allowing their arms to drop and who
Right.
else is carrying the weight, you know? And so that gets instilled because the team gets punished. But after a while, the instructors are smart enough, man, we don't get this guy out of this team, he's going to, the rest of the guys are going to get hurt.
Right.
But there's some stuff there that, there's evolutions there that allow these guys to rise.
Yeah. I think it's funny when civilians look at, special operations folks, and I think that the common perception is that, individually they're amazing, they accomplish these things amazing, they're the guy or girl, I guess, as the case may be. But really, throughout the special operations community in the military, of course, is the idea of teamwork. You cannot do this alone. People don't operate alone, and it's all about the team accomplishing, the bigger goal of the bigger mission.
Yeah, I know that going through BUDS, the one thing I did experience is, man, a lot. As I went through, there was a lot that was on my plate, and the moment I thought that I'm the only one that can take care of this, man, that's when things got really, really hard.
Yeah.
But the moment I began to learn that no, there are other people here that are willing to contribute. Let's utilize this. That made things a lot easier. We got a lot more accomplished.
Yeah.
And so, that gets in. So what I wanted to say was, when you transition into a platoon, though, this ego that you have, that you've developed going into a platoon, kind of gets checked because, man, I'm so capable. I'm able to do all these things. And then after the teams, and you go into life, and then you run into some problems. Once again, this ego wells up, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm the one who is responsible for this mess. I'm going to take care of it. I'm going to do whatever I can. I'm not going to let anybody in, whether it's I'm shameful, whatever. I have to take care of it because I'm the one who caused it. I'm going to fix it, and that leads to a lot of hurt.
Yeah, that's for Mighty Oaks, that's one of our basic, kind of core principles is that you can't do this alone, and you shouldn't even try to do it alone. We talk about isolation and how dangerous isolation is to someone who is struggling, someone who is having a hard time, and it's so strange to me, talking to veterans, because in the military, I mean, the idea of the battle buddy and the team and the platoon and the whatever your task organization is, that's central. Like, no one questions that. But then in life, we feel like we can do this thing alone. I can figure this out on my own. I'm having a hard time in my marriage. I'll figure it out. I'm having a hard time in life. I'll figure it out. I'm struggling spiritually. I'll figure it out. And really, we need to take that same mindset of team, humbling ourselves and saying, I need somebody in my life who can help me work through this. I can't do it on my own, nor should I try. We're just not designed to do things alone.
Yeah, and that's something I had to learn again, because now keep in mind, it's easy for me to think about, have that mentality inside of a platoon, because I know I can't do it alone. I'm gonna have to count on people. The people are gonna have to contribute to what I'm doing. But when I get into, outside of the military, and now I'm dealing with a problem, I initially tried to handle it. Man, for me, I tell you right now, one thing I've learned going through Mighty Oaks was that accountability is key.
Yeah.
For me to be responsible for something and someone else, and what I mean by something is, listen, things happen in the marriage, and so this needs to go in a better direction. Let me get someone alongside to ensure that I'm doing and I'm walking properly down the road that I chose to go, and I'm doing the right things as it pertains to my marriage.
Right.
Let me be held accountable by somebody else, and we call that a corpsman.
Yeah.
It paid huge dividends in my life to have someone else to be willing to speak into my life, like Chad said, to tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear.
Right. Why do you think so many military people struggle with that? We know it in the military, but we really struggle with it in life. What's the catalyst for that?
The catalyst, well,
I mean, is it just pride? We're just proud.
obvious one is pride.
Yeah.
This one is pride. But you know what? I also think that guys have this sense of that, because I've accomplished so much, this is just another hard thing. I think I have what it takes to make this happen. But that's a downward spiral, because in order to come up with some sort of tactic or an upward inside of in a platoon to go do something, like there are things that help us out to do that.
Yeah.
But when I get thrown a curveball, like, man, my daughter's in a lot of problems, my marriage is really hurting, and I think I know what it takes to fix this. That's a different scenario.
Yeah. Crazy. You obviously, this is one of the great things I think about Mighty Oaks as well, is we use our testimonies and our stories and our, experiences to help other people. And you obviously have an incredible story. What are some of the things that to you, when you go into a program, when you're teaching a class, when you're trying to help someone move forward, what are some of the important aspects of your story that you feel like I've got to communicate this to other people so they can either move forward or avoid the same, issues and pitfalls that I've experienced?
Yeah, I would say that the one thing that I would tell people and that I've learned is that I quickly found out that I wasn't the only one that's going through what I'm going through. And because of that, I know that there are other people who I know who need help in what they're going through.
Yeah.
And so, man, the one thing I learned, the best lesson I've learned in Mighty Oaks is that I can actually help somebody else. And in that, I'm learning as well. And that's a beautiful thing, man. When I can contribute to someone else who's hurting and actually come up with a solution based off of what I've learned.
Yes.
And then that helps me in the long run. And then I'm attracted to that because now we're growing together with the understanding I'm not perfect, with the understanding there's going to be difficulty ahead. And yeah, at post Mighty Oaks, there have been some challenges, but I've been equipped.
Yeah. That's awesome. Luis, I appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time to talk again. For those that are interested, you can, on our Mighty Oaks channel, find Luis's, I think it's called Luis's Story, right? I think that's what it's called. Yeah, you don't know. You watch it. You watch it every day. You're like sending it out to your friends. So you'll find it. It's called Luis's Story, and Luis knows that. It's on his personal website or on the Mighty Oaks YouTube channel. You can find it there, and then other interviews. Luis and I have talked about a bunch of stuff over the last couple of years, so you can find that there, and other testimonials, other hopefully helpful information, and that's why we do this, and we're thankful for the opportunity to do it and appreciate it. For those that are interested in Mighty Oaks, and we talked about help and teamwork and working together to move forward. Go to our website, mightyoaksprograms.org, and there you'll find out as much information as you can imagine on our program. Also, there is an application link. You can apply to our program. It does not cost anything to attend. And if you are not close to one of the locations where we run our program, we'll even cover travel to get you there. We want to make sure that everyone can get the help and the connection that they need to move forward. So we'd love to do that and love to share that with you. Again, thank you for watching and or listening, and we'll talk to you next time.